If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
Ah yes, that old saying. If at first you don't succeed, just totally give up and walk away. Making peace in the real world turns out to be a lot harder than the Trump administration ever imagined, which is something of a shocker, I'm sure you will agree. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, having attended talks with Britain, France, Germany and Ukraine, gave a statement to the press saying that the Ukraine war is a terrible thing, which to be fair we knew, but he said it's not our war. And he said this:
We are now reaching a point where we need to decide and determine whether this is even possible or not, which is why we're engaging both sides. So if they're serious about peace, either side or both, we want to help. If it's not going to happen, then we're just going to move on.
So let's be clear why this was the message coming out of a meeting, not with Vladimir Putin, but with European leaders and with Ukraine. Just a couple of days ago, The Economist magazine was reporting that Trump officials had said that they were fed up with European countries providing support to Ukraine, enabling it to keep resisting Russia's invasion. What we've seen from Trump's approach to date has been that his solution to ending the war quickly, which is what he promised he could absolutely do, was always what we thought it would be: align with Russia, they're too big to be bullied, but bully Ukraine into accepting an unequal deal because they don't have the cards. However, what Ukraine has in spades is courage and resolution and determination, as a people who are under fire will have in ways that Trump probably has no capacity to understand. And what Ukraine has are allies, genuine allies, who within the bounds of political reality, of course, recognise their own values in the country that Ukrainian people are fighting to save, and their own interests in helping them to do it. The Economist said that some Pentagon officials had even questioned one unspecified ally, I'm going to take a stab and guess that might have been Britain, about why it continues sending military aid to Ukraine. Apparently that question was ignored. The US would happily exclude Europe from negotiations altogether from the tone of their recent comments, but the problem, of course, is that Russia is highly irked by European sanctions and wants them lifted, so lo and behold, Europe has to be at the table. That's the backdrop to the talks that took place this week, at which Rubio and Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff floated an outline peace framework, the details of which have not been made public. But it's not that hard to work out the likely spirit of said deal, because Witkoff has spent time with Vladimir Putin 3 times, and between meetings has promoted Putin's view of the world pretty much verbatim and with apparent admiration. Russia wants Ukraine to agree to hand over in full regions that it currently only partly occupies, and that as the precondition for peace talks to even begin. When Rubio says he's spoken to Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov as he did, he said he did so to bring him up to speed with the meeting with the Europeans and the Ukrainians. Not that he was pushing him on anything from Russia's side. Things were left with the Ukrainians heading back to discuss the proposal with President Zelensky. So from that you can get that there's no suggestion the Americans are pushing Russia as to whether they will relax even slightly their maximalist position. And logically, America, threatening to walk away, applies zero pressure to Vladimir Putin whatsoever. Indeed, alternatively, it's a lovely little present for Putin, because if America walks away from Ukraine and yet still wants to normalise its relations with Russia, well, that's all of Putin's birthdays come all at once. It's not as though he's even pretending at this stage. Just yesterday, the Russian United Nations ambassador Vasily Nebenzia said that it was unrealistic to talk about a full ceasefire. So America's threat to walk away is, once again, purely intended to apply pressure to Ukraine, with a bit of spillover pressure on Europe. What will it mean for the US to walk away? I mean, let's face it, if it just meant that they'd stop sending Steve Witkoff to have happy talks with Putin and stop trying to push Ukraine to accept Putin's terms, don't think anybody would mind that in the slightest. Frankly, at this stage, I would expect a number of people to be punching the air. But of course, that's not it, because that wouldn't apply the pressure. So the US walking away from a peace process means the US walking away from Ukraine in every sense, in the way that they gave Ukraine a taste of just a while ago. So the lack of additional military support, well, that's not a thing, because that's pretty much a given. Whatever happens, no difference there. But no intelligence sharing, so much harder for Ukraine on the battlefield. Quite possibly no Starlink internet service. Now, I know Elon Musk said that the service would never be withdrawn, but these people say all sorts of garbage all the time and then do the exact opposite. So you don't get to do that and then have people take you at your word. The question America is asking of Ukraine is, yes, these terms may be deeply unfair and unpopular for you. Boo-hoo, we don't care. If it's that, or we leave you without support to Putin's military forces, how's that going to play out for you? And don't forget, when the US does walk away, if that's what happens, it will do so undoubtedly loudly blaming Ukraine and President Zelensky specifically. After all, the day after Russia killed 35 people in the city of Sumy, Trump was going on about how the war was Zelensky's fault and the attack on Sumy was an accident.
When you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
Honestly, I'm going to need a vaccine booster against moron to listen to any more of that sort of comment. This was as Zelensky had offered to buy American Patriot missile defense systems for $15 billion, a commercial deal, not military aid, but he had been rejected. How much clearer does it need to be? The US does not want to sell weapons to Ukraine because it wants it to fail and to be forced to accept defeat. I mean, you can call it a peace deal if you want, but it's really terms of surrender by any other name. The only side of whom concessions are being demanded by Trump is Ukraine. America is posing as a peace broker, but it is an adversary, using its position to seek to force terms onto a country that is fighting for its life. Now, how will Ukraine respond? Obviously, the perception there has been that they have to keep trying to get the Americans on side, however obnoxious their public pronouncements and their behaviour. Hence, they've just recently signed an outline minerals deal with them. I just hope they didn't do so under the belief it was going to lead to any security guarantees, because clearly that is just not going to be the case. The question outstanding is this one. Is Trump right to believe that by America walking away, they would force Ukraine into a position of defeat? Rubio said that if the sides became serious about seeking peace, then America would be happy to step back in and help to make it happen. So sure, when Ukraine accepts it has been defeated, Trump would like to fly back in and negotiate peace, call it a great deal for both sides, and then demand his Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe that's what will happen. Maybe that is the brutal reality of unequal power in a world where power is the only thing that counts anymore. I'm hoping that's not going to prove the case, and that survival and justice for the people of Ukraine is still possible even in a Trump world. Well, we might be finding out on a shorter timescale than we expected whether that's the case or not.